When looking back on how I used to think and feel growing up as a fundamentalist evangelical Christian, I inevitably find myself considering what I would say to my past self. If shown a glimpse of who I am today, my past Christian self would be appalled, as well as pretty confused as to why I didn't stay on the straight and narrow path of Christianity. It'd be easy enough to present him with reasons I no longer believe, but what I'd really want to explain is how I moved beyond the dogma that plagued my mind as a kid and how I'm all the better for it. So I've been writing what I'd want to say to my past self in the form of short letters, each addressed to a different age and addressing a different topic. They've helped me process my thoughts and feelings about my past. I began considering sharing them on my other social media in hopes of helping others reflect on and process their own journey surrounding religion, but I realized that if I really want to help as many people as possible, I need to share all of this in an actual video on my channel. So at the risk of making myself a bit vulnerable, here are my letters from present atheist me to past Christian me. Music Sunday. Drew, the sermon you just heard will stick with you for the rest of your life. Up until the age you are now, nothing you've learned about Christianity or your church has influenced you to think skeptically about religion. Now, though, as you enter adolescence, you'll begin to learn some things that will, in adulthood, change your life drastically. You've always enjoyed when the church has had special music along with a sermon about music, but this one really felt like a learning experience, didn't it? When the pastor spoke about how sinful it is for other churches to play drums and electric guitars during worship, it's only natural that you didn't immediately get why it was such a problem. However, I'm glad you listened when he explained that when worship music is driving and emotional, it can make people think they're worshiping God when they're really just losing themselves in the music. In ways you won't fully understand until you're an adult, he was actually right. Why would people do that, you're wondering? Why would people think they're worshiping God, communing with him directly, when they're obviously just getting warm fuzzies from singing an emotional song to good music? People can tell the difference between God's presence and good music, right? Well, you'll be wondering about that until you're grown up, but you will find an answer. Fair warning, you will face a lot of judgment for asking that question throughout your teenage years, but you will never be in the wrong for being curious and wanting to learn. Never give up seeking answers. Punk rock versus album burning. Drew, the self you're cultivating right now is not for them. It's for you, and that's okay. Almost anywhere else, a 16-year-old who graduates high school early, teaches himself multiple instruments, never even thinks about drinking or drugs, always stays out of trouble, and takes care of his younger siblings would be considered a good kid. It's not you that's gotten it wrong. It's the congregation. It's no wonder you're so interested in first-wave punk rock. Just as with punks from the late 70s, others define you by their perception of your rebellion, even though all you've done is be yourself. Having rumors spread about you because one of your friend's parents found out you play bass is not normal. Parents disallowing their kids from seeing you outside of church because you listen to secular music is not normal. Having others gossip about you because your hair touches your ears and you wear slim-fit jeans is absolutely not normal. You only get called a rebel because that's how an individual looks in a sea of utter conformity. A couple years back, you listened to a story in youth group about saying goodbye to secular music. The speaker talked about how he listened to country music as a teenager but ended up turning back to God after going to church camp. Remember the climax of that story? He took every album he owned, threw them in the trash, and then felt the weight of his guilt lifted off his shoulders. After that sermon, the other kids talked almost eagerly about trashing and burning their books and CDs that didn't glorify God. You didn't, though, and for that act of supposed rebellion, you should be proud. It's okay to extend your quiet resistance even further. The guilt you've battled for years over your music taste will never do you any good. You're right when you say there's nothing sinful about having a particular sound enter your ears. Please, for your own good, leave that guilt behind. I know you feel like doing so would, in a way, mean leaving those in your home church behind, but that's an inevitability that you'll learn to accept. I'll leave you with an insight I gained only after confronting that inevitability head-on. Those who speak badly of you, those who recoil at the sight or sound of any expression outside their purview, are not actually motivated by malice. They don't hate you, and as you grow up, you'll realize that you never hated them either. They're afraid. The world you live in alongside them is a bubble. You're all surrounded by a thin barrier, and while you think that barrier is durable, they know that like the surface of a bubble, that barrier can burst apart at the slightest disturbance. They don't hate you. They just fear what you might do to their world. I know this doesn't make you feel any less alone, but knowing this will eventually quell the resentment you feel for them and make room for the compassion that will eventually replace it. Before the first domino fell. Drew, remember how you think about science, cosmology, and theology right now before you finish up sophomore year in college. One day, it'll be a source of great insight for you. Unbelievably, as ironic as it is to say that, one day, many people won't believe that the person you are right now ever existed. Later in your life, your peers will struggle to picture you as you were at 19, but your detractors will outright deny that you were ever the person you are right now as a sophomore. Always remembering how you thought at this age will give you something which many of your detractors don't have: a full, graphic understanding of how an honest person can think wholly differently from yourself. You know you're being honest about your beliefs. You know your strong relationship with Christ. If and when people ever gaslight you, telling you that you never truly believed and lived wholeheartedly as a dedicated follower of Jesus Christ, remember this you. Stand up to them and tell them exactly who knows your mind and your past better than anyone: you. At 22, you'll look back on what you believed at 19 and cringe. You'll feel shame for who you were. By 25, though, you'll see your memories from that time as a window into the mind of someone who holds an opposing worldview. Remember who you are at 19, not because you'll always want to be this way, but because you'll want to understand people who are this way. With how little interest or effort many people will put toward understanding who you become, you'll realize how precious empathy can be. You won't want to become someone who treats others with so little understanding. For the sake of preserving your future self's most cherished resource, always unapologetically remember who you were at 19. The first domino has fallen. You can deny them, you can try to forget them, you can distract yourself from them, but you won't get away from them. The questions are there, and no amount of suppression or avoidance will erase them from your mind at this point. You thought you were successful in forgetting the doubt and confusion sparked by your astronomy class at the end of sophomore year. You're a senior now, though, and it's back. You're not getting rid of it. The only way to deal with your questions is to finally seek answers to them. You already know that's what you have to do, but you don't have to feel guilty about it. There's nothing wrong with coming to a point where you know you must either choose to seek truth or faith above all else, and choosing to seek truth. The task of seeking out answers to all your questions seems daunting, but you won't have to figure out everything at once. Taking your time is okay. From your current perspective, it seems that the deeper you dive into questioning Christianity, the less likely you'll be to ever find peace, love, and community again. That fear, though, is something you'll learn to question as well. Is life without Christianity really so bad, or do you only think so because Christianity told you that? As you question your faith, remember to question the parts which told you that you couldn't live without your faith. As you are now, you're primarily motivated to seek truth over faith only because you don't want to believe a lie. What you could never know from where you are now, though, is that the truth you'll find beyond your faith is worth pursuing on its own. When you assume that this stage of questioning faith will be hard, you're right, but you don't have to make it even harder by punishing yourself. If faith withstands scrutiny, there's no harm in scrutinizing it. If it doesn't, it's worth scrutinizing in order to know the truth. So go for it. Guilt, shame, fear, loneliness, they're all temporary. And once you see how unnecessary it was to inflict them upon yourself, you'll be glad you pushed through them for truth's sake. In writing these letters, I thought about whether I'd actually send them to my past self if I were really able. The problem is, I don't know for sure that doing that would put me in a better place now. I'm not going to say it wouldn't, but my inability to know the answer to that question serves to remind me that it's no use for me to lament over the past. Instead, I can use my past to help others process their thoughts and feelings surrounding leaving faith. For me, that's a useful way to process my own thoughts and experiences, and that's why I chose to show these letters ultimately. Now, I'd like to ask you guys for something. If you think writing letters to your past religious self could help you in the way it's helped me, consider doing it. You don't have to be non-religious now to do it. If you went through a major religious change, especially from an oppressive or harmful sect to something more progressive, I still invite you to do it. Then, if you feel comfortable doing so, share your letter online. There are a lot of people going through the deconstruction of their own faith in silent agony, and if we have the opportunity to help them forgive themselves for asking questions and feel like they're not alone in their journey, then I think we should take it. I'm going to start a hashtag on Twitter so we can all support each other in writing and posting these letters. When you share a letter of your own, tag the post with hashtag letters to me. If just one person going through the deconstruction of their faith sees our letters and hashtag and realizes they're not going through it alone, it'll be worth it. So let's make that happen together. Thanks for watching. I've been Drew of Genetically Modified Skeptic. A special thanks to my community on Patreon, which keeps my channel going. If you want to hear more from me, follow me on social media at the handles below. I'm pretty active on Twitter and will be even more so when you guys start sharing letters of your own, so give me a follow there. Finally, if you're an apostate in need, there are resources linked in the description to help you find community and mental health support. Remember to be kind to each other in the comments, and until next time, stay skeptical.